Hello, so today we are going to be making jam tarts. So before you start, make sure you've got all your equipment. So we've got the mixing bowl, I have got my flour, I have got my flour, margarine. Okay, so make sure you've wiped down your surface and washed your hands. And then you are ready to go. So firstly, sieve your flour into your bowl, like so. Okay, just tap the flour through the sieve by tapping the sieve against your hands. Okay, now we sieve the flour to check for bugs, get rid of any lumps and also get some air in between the particles. So to my sieved flour, I'm now going to add in my margarine. Now you could use butter, but as I say, I've got margarine. So with your fingertips, break up the margarine in the flour. And now we're going to rub it between our fingertips. So we're aiming to look like for breadcrumbs, breadcrumb consistency. Okay, this is known as the rubbing in method, one of the 4 cake making methods. Now, as you rub in the flour and the butter, the margarine, okay, lift it up so we can get some air into the particles to get a good crumb on our pastry. Okay, now if you think that you are done, give your bowl a shake and any large lumps will rise to the top. So keep going. Okay, give it a shake again. As you can see, still lots of lumps in there, so we need to keep going. Now prior to doing this, I put my oven on, so my oven's on to 200, which is nice, that'll be nice and hot for when we put the pastry into the oven. Okay, so it's looking like breadcrumbs. So can you see that? So give it a shake, a few more lumps on top there. Now, the reason we use our fingertips is because they're the cooler part of our hands. If you rubbed it with your palms, the butter could melt because your palms are warm. Okay, so that's all done. So now I need to add my water. Right, you need to make sure it's cold water. Because with pastry, you need to keep everything cold. So I'm going to use my palette knife to bring this together. Now, if you don't have a palette knife, you could use either your hands or a mixing spoon. Now, make sure you add the water gradually, but before I'm going to do that, I'm just going to put in a bit of sugar that I've got here. So so it's going to be a sweetened pastry. That's stuck in there. Right, I'll just mix that around. Okay, so now I'm going to add in my water. Just a little bit at a time, adding it gradually. We don't want the pastry to go all sticky because it will change the consistency, which is not what we want. Okay, like I say, if you don't have a palette knife, you could use a mixing spoon or even just your fingers, that's fine. Okay, a bit more water in there. So gradually is the key here. I think that looks like that's good to me. Now, so I'm going to get my hands in there and get all the crumbs. Okay, so the key with pastry is keep everything cold so it doesn't crack and so it rolls out nicely. So, put my bowl to one side, flour my worktop, Now if you don't have a flour dredger at home, perfectly fine. Just use a little bit of flour out with your hands and put it onto the table. Okay, so there's my pastry done like that. And the reason why you need to get the lumps of butter out is because otherwise you would end up with a marbling effect in the pastry, which is not what we want. So with your rolling pin, you're going to roll it out. Pastry, short, sharp strokes. You're not papering a wall. Okay. Now if it gets a little bit sticky, put some flour over the top of your pastry and flour your rolling pin as well. Now you want it to be not too thick, so we'll probably go for about 3 millimeters thickness. Now these jam tarts are going to be slightly different because rather than putting the jam in and baking them in the oven, we're just going to bake the pastry shells first. And then when they come out the oven, that's when we're going to add the jam in. It stops the jam from bubbling over it in the oven. Right, we get a cutter. So, using your cutter, serrated edge because we are doing sweet jam tarts. So cut down and lift up, okay? You don't cut down and twist. Cut down, cut straight down, cut straight down. Well, I need 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now I'm just going to peel the pastry back, lift jam tart like that, and put it into my tray. Okay, just moving this along so we've got a bit more space. Right. Now, if they start to stick, just use your palette knife to help you lift them up. Peel the pastry off the outside, lifting it up. Okay. Okay, really make sure when you're rolling out your pastry that you've got plenty of flour underneath, because the pastry, when it warms up, it gets very soft and it's more likely to stick to the worktop then. Okie dokie. Right, last 3 in there. And then just before we put them into the oven, you need to get a fork and prick the jam tarts 2 or 3 times on the base. This is so that the pastry doesn't bubble up in the oven. So, where's my fork? Haven't got a fork. There's a fork. Right, so, with your fork, just prick a couple of times the bases. Okay, these are so they, like I said, so they don't bubble up in the oven. Okay, so that's good to go. So I'm now going to put that into the oven. Okay, so they go into the oven for between 12 to 15 minutes. So in the meantime, I'm going to get some jam. Jam, you can use any jam. You could even use chocolate spread because you're not actually putting it into the oven. And put some jam into a bowl. Like that. Now to that, just going to add in a tiny little bit of warm water. Just a tiny bit, we don't want to make a soup. Okay, tiny little bit. and then using a spoon, knife, fork, whatever, okay, soften the jam up like that, okay. So now we're ready to go. So in the meantime, get everything cleared up, and then we'll come back when the jam tart shells are out of the oven, okay?